Make sure you guys hit the subscribe button if you guys are enjoying the content that we're throwing up. And make sure you guys hit the like button if you enjoy the video. And yeah, let's begin. Okay, so picking back up again with Too Powerful for the Marvel Cinematic Universe, what I want to do here is I want to talk about the White Phoenix of the Crown, which is kind of like an expansion of the Phoenix Force. We might call it like Phoenix/White Phoenix, just to kind of make it easier. But the idea behind this, to kind of explain this a little bit, because the Phoenix is really, really interesting, but there's two aspects to it. There's kind of two concepts when it comes to the Phoenix. There's the Phoenix Force as you think of it, which is what you'll see in like the Dark Phoenix movie, and then there's the White Phoenix of the Crown. So when it comes to the Phoenix Force in Marvel Comics, it's a multiversal entity. And what that means is that across all the universes that exist in the entirety of Marvel Comics, there's only one Phoenix Force. Now, the Phoenix Force may split itself among various people in different universes, meaning there's an alternate reality where like Cyclops becomes the Phoenix, there's an alternate reality where like Magneto becomes the Phoenix, but it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, those are all just different representations of the same Phoenix Force power, which only exists in one form. And so what this means is that the Phoenix is effectively the sum total of all life that has ever, currently does, and will ever exist in the multiverse. Now, the reason why this matters is because universes are being formed and destroyed all the time in the Marvel multiverse, right? Like that happens all the time. In the same way that in our universe here in like the real world, stars are burning out and being born all the time. The exact same thing happens with the universe, with the various universes. And so because universes are constantly being killed and being reborn, the Phoenix Force has a constant source of power, essentially. It'll always exist. Until the time when the multiverse dies, the Phoenix Force will always continue to exist. Now, conventional wisdom would say that the Phoenix Force's power would begin to wane as the multiverse approaches its end, but that's not the case, because the Phoenix Force, the source of its power, is not the all life in the multiverse that will exist. It has ever and currently does. And so say that the multiverse came into existence at like year 0, and at year like 10 trillion, it'll come to an end. What that means is that as you get closer to the year 10 trillion, the Phoenix Force's power is still bolstered or is still maintained by all the years that came before that mark that you are when you're closer to 10 trillion. So if you're at like year 9 trillion, then the Phoenix Force still has like 9 trillion years worth of power, if that makes any sense. But when the Phoenix Force manifested, the earliest story that we have goes back millions and millions and millions of years. And it was originally covered in Excalibur number 50. And what you had a guy named Necrom, I think is what it was. He was basically an alternate realities version of like Doctor Strange, the Sorcerer Supreme. And Necrom had this idea to essentially to have these kind of pillars of creation brought together. And the reason why is because Necrom discovered that the kind of border, so to speak, around every universe houses power. It's basically the power that those borders use to keep the universes from crashing into each other. And so what ended up happening is Necrom realized you could tap into that power. And if you did, you could use that power to your own ends. Well, then he started asking the question, what if I used all the power from all the borders of all the universes that exist across the multiverse? With that rationale, what he did is he basically tricked the Phoenix into creating these kind of pillars across the multiverse to merge all the universes into one, which would in turn bolster all the power at the edge of the universes. He would then absorb that power into himself and basically become God and do everything, anything he wanted to do. And so he was essentially defeated by a handful of different people. And when the Phoenix Force realized what he was trying to do, it basically deactivated and destroyed all the pillars and set everything back to the way it was supposed to be. And so from that point going forward, the Phoenix Force kind of took off into space. Now, following that, the Phoenix actually ended up returning to Earth in Jason Aaron's Avengers 1 million BC storyline, where it basically kind of manifested in its like actual form and appeared to Odin, and the two of them had a relationship for a while. That's still being fleshed out, so there's really not a whole lot of information to go on. But following that, and following the debut of Jean Grey in Marvel Comics, following her birth, the fact that she was really, really powerful and so on and so forth, she had a young friend named Annie. And Annie was a girl who was basically killed in a car accident when she was hit by a car while riding her bike. And when Jean Grey used her telepathy to tap into the mind of Annie in her final moments, Jean Grey was overwhelmed by the experience of what it meant to die and sent out the psychic signal. Now, the psychic signal had two results. The first is that Charles Xavier picked up on it, which is why he brought her to the X-Men in the first place. But the second part, the second result of this psychic signal is that the Phoenix picked up on it. And when it did, it basically realized this person is almost a perfect host for me. She's almost perfectly in tune. So it would be like if you and somebody else sung at the same note, right? Like G sharp. If you sung at the exact same note, then that's basically what this was. Jean Grey was a perfect host for the Phoenix. And so the Phoenix started watching Jean and basically saying, somewhere along the line, I'm going to bond with her. And when that happens, we will go forward as a singular entity and that's what happened during the Phoenix Saga. And so that leads up to that whole set of events. Now, of course, that goes into a whole other series of issues, Dark Phoenix and so on and so forth, which probably deserve videos on their own when the Dark Phoenix movie drops. But what you have there is you have the Phoenix Force, which bonded to Jean, and basically at a future point in time, Jean became the White Phoenix of the Crown. Now, what does that mean? Okay, technically speaking, the Phoenix Force can bond itself to anybody. Apocalypse, the villain, could become the Phoenix. Iron Man, Tony Stark, could be a host for the Phoenix Force. But just because you're a host for the Phoenix Force does not mean that you can use the full extent of its power. The White Phoenix of the Crown, which is to say a person who is a perfect host for the Phoenix, can use the full totality of the Phoenix's powers. Now, how does a person become a perfect host of the Phoenix? That's never explained. Only two people have ever done it, Hope Summers and Jean Grey, and that's it. Those are the only two people who have ever become a perfect host for the Phoenix. And Marvel just says it's because they're just a perfect host, and that's really all it is. Now, what does it mean when a person becomes the White Phoenix of the Crown? Well, it means they can do anything they want to, and that was covered in Grant Morrison's Here Comes Tomorrow storyline, when he kind of talks about the idea of the White Phoenix and says that the White Phoenix exists to quote-unquote fix things that are wrong in universes. What does that mean? It means the White Phoenix is essentially a multiversal reality warper that can bend and reshape the multiverse in whatever way it wants to. But the difference here is that at the end of the day, it's still a person. And that's the cool thing, and that's kind of our way about saying too powerful for the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but how they could also be defeated. So say, for example, in the MCU, that Captain America, because of the fact that he's so patriotic and does the right thing, that he is a perfect host for the Phoenix. And Captain America becomes the White Phoenix of the Crown. So basically his suit turns like completely white, the sigil on his chest turns to like gold and silver, and basically like he just kind of goes forward with like multiversal reality warping power. At the end of the day, he is still a person. The White Phoenix of the Crown doesn't really transcend the mind of the person whose power inherits it. It's just a sudden influx of power. And basically like they're hugely capable in what they can do. Captain America would be mentally unstable. He really, while he is a perfect host, the mind being able to grasp cosmic awareness, which is to say knowing everything that's going on across the multiverse in that instance at that point in time would be almost completely overwhelming. And so if he didn't end up in a comatose state, he would basically start to break down and begin to lose his mind. That would make him mentally unstable. In his mental instability, he wouldn't be able to mentally grasp in its totality all the power he possesses at his disposal, which means he wouldn't be able to tap into all that power immediately. Now, again, that's the difference. If someone like Iron Man is not fully compatible with the Phoenix, even when his mind becomes right, and even when he regains his sanity, he wouldn't be able to tap into the Phoenix's full power. When Captain America's mind restabilizes and he goes back to being sane, he would be able to use the full power of the Phoenix Force. Now, in that window, however long that window happens to be, whether it's a day, whether it's a couple years, Captain America would still be exceedingly dangerous, but he can still be defeated, because if he's not able to tap into the full power of the Phoenix, that means he can't do things like make himself bulletproof. It means he can't do things like keep himself from being harmed in any capacity, from like changing bullets in a gun to like snowflakes, for those of you guys who remember The Watchmen. There's a lot of things he can't do, and so he's not immutable, indestructible, and unbeatable yet. And that's the window the Avengers have. One, they would have to understand what's going on with him, and then two, realize or come to the conclusion that there's no saving him, that he has to be destroyed in order to save the universe, and then kill him. At that point, it's quick, fast, and in a hurry. There's not much going on there. He could be destroyed right off the bat and super easily. But let's say, for example, that Captain America's mind restabilizes, he regains the full total power, or he gains total access to the full power of the Phoenix Force, and then decides to attack and destroy the universe. No one would be able to stop him. There's nothing you could do to stop him, because he's a multiversal entity. The sum total power of everything that's there wouldn't be able to defeat him. Now, the only question that comes into play is something like, what would happen if somebody had the Infinity Stones? To my knowledge, up to this point in Marvel Comics, we've never seen a story where the Infinity Stones have faced off against the Phoenix Force. We probably will somewhere along the line, because it's a clickbait story. I'd read the heck out of it. Oh, dude, if I did a video that like told the story of somebody with the Infinity Gauntlet fighting somebody with like the full power of the Phoenix Force, oh, that video would blow up. Oh my God, it would go nuts. You guys would watch the hell out of that video. You guys would just be like, dude, I gotta see this, man. Like, I gotta see this, like Thanos with the Infinity Gauntlet versus the White Phoenix of the Crown. Oh, people would watch the heck out of that. But still, like, as far as I'm aware, it doesn't exist. So we don't really have an answer to that question. We could power scale, but at that point, we're just kind of cooking the books to make whatever argument we want to make. And so again, it's interesting there. But kind of going with what we've seen in the Marvel Cinematic Universe up to this point, anybody who's like a White Phoenix of the Crown, there's nothing that could stop them, because it'd be like if the Living Tribunal showed up and said, I want to destroy your universe. Well, there's not gonna be able to do anything. Then there's nothing they can do to stop him, because the power is so extreme. But again, in that small little moment there, Captain America, or whoever's the White Phoenix, could easily be destroyed if they haven't quite gained an understanding of the kind of power they possess, and they're mentally unstable. But with that being said, guys, we're gonna bring this video to an end. If you are new here to Comics Explained, make sure you guys hit the sub button to become part of the Rob Corps. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you drop a like, and yeah, I will catch you all later. Peace.